Welcome to our calendar year 2023 annual OSHA training. After this program, you'll need to go to the annual OSHA training and knowledge assessment, which the link is in the email. As a fair and attractive employer, Kerber takes its social responsibility for occupational health and safety and environmental protection very seriously. These are key elements of our success and sustainable contribution to a healthy, safe, and more efficient working environment. Our activities enable a better life for current and future generations. Every one of us can make a contribution to help us become a sustainable group. Today's annual OSHA training is an awareness level course and is intended to provide general knowledge to empower all of us to work in a healthy and safe environment. This training should take approximately 1.5 hours total to include the knowledge assessment. This course does not substitute for required further training for competency or authorized, such as lockout, tagout, arc flash, first aid responder, or powered industrial equipment such as fork trucks, rabbits, and aerial work platforms. The annual OSHA training will cover risk or hazards each of us are or may be exposed to in our daily routine. We will briefly touch on aspects of our EHS program and then roll into the annual OSHA training. Today's training is a conversation, and we will have several people discuss their experiences to reinforce why each of us are empowered to take an active role in our and our colleagues' health and safety. I invite anyone today to share their experiences as well. Let's learn from each other's life experiences and learn as an organization, improving our product, service, and solution delivery to our global customers. If you have questions regarding your working environment, our EHS processes, controls, or this training, simply ask your supervisor or contact your EHS team. So for our safety moment, let's talk a bit about PPE followed by a short video. Remember, PPE is the last line of defense against a hazard, and it's the weakest. The risk or hazard may still contact the target, which is me or you. So PPE is selected in response to remaining risk or hazards in our working environment, job task, or work scopes. For instance, a hard hat for object-generated impacts like a drop tool, or bump caps for wearer-generated impacts like running into a leading edge or a sharp edge. The Pocket Risk Assessment tool determines if we need PPE, and the JHA informs us of what specific PPE is required to commence work. If PPE is selected in response to residual risk or hazards, it needs to be worn and fit for purpose.
Specialized clothing or equipment is worn by employees for protection against health and safety hazards. Personal protective equipment is designed to protect many parts of the body, for example, eyes, head, face, hands, feet, and ears. Before you start any job, assess the real and potential hazards associated with that job. Report all defective PPE to your superior and have them replaced. Be happy to join your family safely.
All right, so our life-saving rules have been developed to keep us safe while executing high-risk activities. The life-saving rules are about environmental protection, health, and safety, not discipline. The life-saving rules establish a consistent approach in the prevention of serious injuries and is in keeping with our core values of integrity, safety, respect, and environmental protection, along with our collaborative goal of a sustainable zero-harm culture. Our life-saving rules represent a concerted effort to reduce serious incidents and to reach our ambition of a sustainable zero-harm culture while providing industry-leading products, services, and solutions to our business partners. Any job task falling under the life-saving rules are considered non-routine and require the use of a daily JHA and associated supporting documentation prior to the commencement of work. Our life-saving rules are the control of hazardous energy, which is electrical safety, and then lockout, tagout. Working at heights, crane and lifting operations, machine guarding, signage, and safety interlocks. For additional information regarding our life-saving rules, you can refer to the EHS manual, online training, or ask your supervisor or contact your EHS team. Our EHS focus statement and core values provide us the vision of where we are going, our EHS focus statement, and how we're going to collectively get there, or our core values. Our EHS focus statement is our goal of a sustainable, zero-harm culture while providing industry-leading products and services to our business partners can only be achieved if we each take an active role in our and our colleagues' health and safety with a deliberate focus for environmental protection. Our core values represent what we hold as the industry leader in parcel supply chain to be fundamental truths in achieving our collective goal of a sustainable, zero harm culture, again, while providing industry leading products, services, and solutions to our business partners. Our core values are zero harm operations are achievable. Operate in a sustainable, healthy, and safe manner with deliberate environmental protection. Exercise stop work authority, do it safely or not at all, and there is always time to do it right. What does this mean? This means that Kerber has empowered and expects that we plan and execute our work with quality, health, safety, and environmental protection as a foundation for how we conduct ourselves, everyone, everywhere, to consistently and predictably provide innovative industry-leading products and services. Can we all agree that this is a realistic goal and achievable if we each take an active role in our day-to-day job activities? Stronger together. We manage risk or hazards that are or may be present in our job task or work scopes by assessing actual and potential risk present in the job task, work scope, and our working environment. This slide looks a bit busy, but with some explanation, it is a great visual for planning and controlling work. The primary method of managing risk in our job task or work scopes are to assess each job task or work scope for hazards and their controls prior to the commencement of work through our job hazard analysis process. All work participants are required to attend or review a JHA prior to starting work. Additionally, DFW campus have performed a hazard identification and assessment of risk and opportunities that identifies generic hazards associated with expected operation activities on our campus and our individual work cells or laboratories. As we perform work, we must continuously evaluate the work and working environment for the control of hazards. Our barriers, controls, or mitigations that protect us, the target, from risk are the supervisor. It's the first line of defense. The supervisor evaluates the job task and assigns trained and competent personnel and ensures there's right tools for the job. The pocket risk assessment tool. The team evaluates the job task, job or human factors, risk, and controls. The job hazard analysis is a team conversation which results in a documented, agreed upon work plan. Team performance. We stick to the agreed upon work plan or the JHA, continually monitoring the job task or working environment and exercise stop work authority if any actual or potential deviation from the JHA occurs. Stop work authority is the last and final line of defense. It is the final barrier to maintain control of work and prevent the release of a hazard or hazards into our working environment. When we exercise stop work authority, that means all other controls we've just discussed either partially or completely failed. Simple. Exercise stop work authority, reassess the job, and resume work once made safe to do so. Kerber has empowered each of us to exercise stop work authority, which is basically we suspend a work task when the control of environmental health and safety risk is not clearly established, understood, or controlled. Remember, you don't have to prove a job task unsafe to stop, but you do need to prove it is safe to start it. Managing and controlling risk, the job hazard analysis, is a process and a conversation that sometimes should be documented. So routine work has an indefinite validity of 90 days, where we review and develop and sign off by all personnel. Non-routine is a daily documented JHA. For instance, any work falling under one of our life-saving rules or a job task or work scope that doesn't have a JHA. The terms routine and non-routine are not related to frequency of work performed, rather the risk associated with the job task or work scope. Elevated risk, such as work falling under our life-saving rules, are considered non-routine, or again, where a JHA doesn't have an existing job associated with it. The purpose of the JHA is to focus us on the task at hand, to always provide a healthy and safe at Kerber working environment. The JHA process is accomplished by assessing and controlling risk or hazards specific to your assigned job task or work scope. All job task or work scope personnel, again, participate in the development or review of the JHA. Again, personnel sign the document acknowledging they understand their roles and responsibilities. We identify appropriate PPE through the JHA. We identify source documents such as safety data sheet, lockout tagout procedures, or the life-saving rule. The JHA is an agreed upon work plan. If any actual or potential deviation occurs from the JHA, simply exercise stop work authority. Think of the JHA as a contract with Kerber, yourself, and your coworkers. We report all incidents, stop work authority, and near misses immediately to understand what happened, identify and eliminate similar scenarios across the organization. Why experience an unplanned event or unwanted event when we can learn from others? Think of touching a hot stove versus being told the stove is hot. We can apply this learning technique to improve our part of maintaining Kerber's dominance in the parcel supply chain industry. Organizational learning results in improved Q, EHS, and sustainability performance, resulting in operational excellence or K excellence. What does K excellence look like? Let's hand it over to Stefan to learn a bit about K excellence.
Good morning, everybody. Still trying to get the camera on, but that doesn't like me today. Anyhow, I'm sorry for that. K excellence means to focus on processes, to focus on business processes like we did in the past. Many of you are Six Sigma trained, which means we improve steadily our processes. And in the end, the goal is to achieve our EHS vision for the company. We need to do that again. And we also need to update all our processes to switch to Kerber. So there's quite a task ahead of us. We don't want to change the content, but we have to change the surroundings of the processes, referring to the right information, to the right sub-processes we have. Was it a question? If not, I would hand back to Eric.
Thank you, Stefan. And I guess we're getting to learn some new terms like operational excellence and K excellence. And that's available on the website, I believe, correct, Stefan? If they go to Kerber, we can access K excellence if we'd like to learn more about that.
That's correct, and we should distribute the link.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So earlier we talked about the DFW campus hazard identification assessment of risk and opportunities. And again, basically it's a site safety assessment for expected risk associated with normal operations conducted here on campus. The HIRO in the past was compiled using JHA's site observations, incidents, near misses, stop work authorities, and internal-external audit observations. Again, it is a high-level management tool identifying risk and hazards with initial risk and residual risk rankings. As you can see, just from looking at this on the left side, you see some colors, red and yellow, which obviously says, hey, we have some work to do. But once we put all the controls, mitigations, or barriers in place, we went back down to a level 1. So the residual risk here is a level 1. So it's acceptable to go ahead and perform our operations. We're currently under review. We have a DFW2 build out, some relocation of work cells. So EHS will be circling back around with all the area of authorities to make sure that we capture anything further on the HIRO. After all site operations and conditions were identified and evaluated, all residual risk again went down to a level 1, which means supervisors can authorize work to proceed. The updated HIRO will be placed on the safety corner for everyone's review and use. So, bloodborne pathogens. While hepatitis B virus and human immunodeficiency virus are specifically identified in the standard, the term includes any pathogenic microorganism that is present in human blood or other potentially infected material and can affect and cause disease in persons who are exposed to blood containing the pathogen. A quick note regarding BBP and first aid responders. There's a yearly required training for first aid responders for bloodborne pathogens, so see the EHS team for your annual BBP training needs. Bloodborne pathogens are transmitted via punctures, needle sticks, or while cleaning up a bloodborne pathogen, broken skin through absorption, mucous membranes, eyes, nose, mouth, and throat. Bloodborne pathogens are also transmitted via contaminated biological fluid. Always assume all bodily fluids contain bloodborne pathogen. Good hygiene, make sure you wash your hands, wear the proper PPE, properly dispose of materials containing bloodborne pathogens, and properly dispose of sharps. First aid responders must acknowledge BBP measures in their training. At a minimum, sharps containers are located in the restrooms. DFW campus has an emergency action program or plan detailing how to respond to specific scenarios. The EAP is located in the EQM and also on the safety corner. If you'd like a contact or understand where the EAP is, please contact the EHS team for further details. For instance, extreme weather, we shelter in place. Fire alarms, we evacuate the structure. Know your exit routes and multiple exit routes and your muster station. Illness or injury, first aid response, and if needed, how to request further emergency services like fire, EMS, or police. If at all possible, use a landline to call 911. This will ensure your call is routed correctly, improving response time when seconds matter. Winter storms, power interruptions, and active shooters. Our co-located operations and projects most likely have a shared emergency action plan. You should work with your site or your client owner facility for their EAP to ensure synergy. Our installation teams who may spend limited time on a client site should also be familiar with site or client EAP and expectations. Do you know where the nearest first aid kit or AED is located, or the nearest medical facility? We have a few responses to multiple scenarios. Fires and evacuation, know multiple routes of exit, and where to muster. Personal accountability is key to arriving fire, EMS, and police. It will drive their initial response. Shelter in place, extreme weather, interior, protected, stairwell, or room. Remember, do not attempt to re-enter the building until authorized to do so. If media arrives on site, notify the appropriate Kerber management representative for DFW campus or your supervisor or manager. The purpose of an EAP is to be prepared, evaluate, and train to scenarios. If you have a question regarding your EAP or access to a client EAP, contact your supervisor or the EHS team. Before we talk a bit about fall protection and working at heights in general, let's hear from David Suarez and his experience while delivering our products and services to one of our most valued customers.
Thank you, Eric. What we're seeing in the industry, of course, is more attention to safety when it comes to being proactive with the contractors. So the example that I have for you today is with Amazon. We were asked a few months back by Amazon if we would participate in their contractor safety program. And what Amazon does is every month they get their contractors that are working on site and even some of their suppliers to participate in an overall safety discussion where they talk about site safety. During the first initial meetings that we had, it was very basic. They went over things like slip and fall hazards, and in particular, the types of hazards that we would see at their facility. And they gave us some examples. And during that meeting, they asked for volunteers to participate amongst their contractors and suppliers to do presentations, even to come on and tell the group of other contractors about some of the hazards and safety items that they see on their particular sites. So Since this goes in line with our proactive approach to safety, we volunteered to give a presentation on fall protection. I reached out to Eric. He made a really good presentation that had to do specifically with our installs going on at the site and how we gather information and how we use that data that we gather either during the site survey or directly from Amazon. Sometimes they have been very gracious to volunteer to go do surveys for us on certain projects where there was no survey. They asked us questions about, what type of equipment are you going to be using and how are you going to lift your equipment up? And to answer that, we said, yes, a lot of those things we determine and they're based on some assumptions. And they volunteered to go get us pictures of their sites in detail where they have access to for lifting and gave us a lot of information. At the end of the presentation, it was really good because there was a great exchange of information, not just from us back to the participants, but all the participants, contractors and suppliers alike, had a lot to say about what they have seen at particular Amazon sites and how they resolved it. So overall, it was a really good participation, but it just goes to show that a lot of our customers and the sites themselves are a lot more proactive than they were just 10 or 15 years ago. Thank you, Eric.
Yep. Thank you, David. And I think the presentation that we gave may have surprised some people because it was fairly in depth, and we're going to kind of go through bits and pieces of that here. But I believe they've had some serious incidents with falls, and part of it was rescue plans and communication of when people are working at height, right, David? And then when we went through and explained our program that we're going to spend a minute or two here, they were fairly satisfied. And I think we elevated ourselves against some of the people that were on that call. And we did share that, and hopefully they will take that and improve the working environment for their coworkers also. So,
Eric, you're absolutely right. The feedback that we got from Amazon was very positive at all levels, and I think they were surprised that we, were the first to jump out there and volunteer to give a presentation that shows our commitment to safety on site, and the feedback that we got from the other suppliers and contractors was also very positive. So I wouldn't say they were completely shocked, but they definitely appreciated it.
yep. And one of the reasons that this is one of our life-saving rules is because if we don't get this right, and for some reason luck isn't on our side, probably not a good consequence is going to occur if we fall from height. So what we want to talk about now is job task or work scope that calls for working at height requires fall protection. This is a Kerber life-saving rule, and the general rule is every job task we do, we should at least look at it for a fall to a potential lower level or a fall from height. Now, you'll see here in a minute, federal OSHA and state OSHA sometimes give us, 4 foot or more for general industry or 6 foot or more from construction industry. Well, what we don't want to do is have that 4 foot or 6 foot threshold lull us into a false sense of security. So just look at every job for a potential for a fall. And if there's no potential, then, we don't have to control it. So federal OSHA construction and federal OSHA general, they don't agree at the same level. And some of the states don't agree either. So what we want to do is make sure that we at least meet the minimum legal expectations, but also let's evaluate every job for a potential fall. Again, the main takeaway is each job should be evaluated, and don't let those thresholds give us artificial sense of security. So prior to assigning or being assigned a job task with a potential fall hazard, we must train the employees on fall hazards. How do we inspect the personal fall arrest system? Does it fit us? Types of fall protection. We have passive fall protections, we have restraint, we have arrest fall protections. We'll get into that in a second. We also need to understand anchorages, rescue, and then storage and proper maintenance of our personal fall arrest systems. This picture is from a training course recently held at our campus. we're discussing fall protection and a scissor lift to include when, where, and how to tie off to the anchorage points. Additionally, we discuss fall restraint versus fall arrest methodologies in a scissor lift and how to maintain 100% tie off 100% of the time, or 100-100. Even getting in and out of some of these machines can expose us to some risk. Assessing risk involves evaluating the job task for hazards to include falls. When planning our work, we consider all potential hazards utilizing the CDC NIOSH hierarchy of controls and our JHA process, which includes a risk assessment prompt identifying job task steps, their respective hazards and controls or mitigations. Ask yourself, is there any other way that I can get this job task or work scope done without working at heights? How can I be hurt doing this job? Have I evaluated the work area for hazards and are there proper anchorage points? Do I have the proper personnel fall arrest system to include connectors? Can I use a fall restraint lanyard, preventing me from reaching the fall hazard? If using a fall arrest lanyard, is there enough free fall for the lanyard to fully deploy? Can I maintain 100% tie off? Are there provisions for a rescue plan, and was this discussed in the JHA? The pocket risk assessment tool will prompt us to consider job task, working at heights, equipment, scissor lift, etc. Job or human factors, which is training or competence, equipment inspections, harness and lanyard inspections, are all considered and documented on the JHA. The pocket risk assessment tool and the JHA process is intended to raise awareness and see safety. Fall exposure, how to eliminate or control the fall. The ANSI fall protection hierarchy of controls, elimination or substitution, designing the work process to assemble work at ground level, or using equipment or a drone to evaluate a high platform. You're removing the personnel from harm's way. Earlier, you heard that David works with our client sites to evaluate and figure what's the best way to assemble equipment or lift equipment. And that's, again, this is part of the elimination or substitution phase. Passive fall protection, which is netting, handrails, and guardrails. This means using barriers that prevent workers from getting close to an edge or similar dangerous elevated work areas. Barriers and similar guards that provide passive fall protection have the benefit of easily protecting larger groups of workers. An active fall restraint prevents the fall by not allowing a worker to reach the fall hazard. The goal with this level is not to stop a fall, but to prevent the worker from getting to the dangerous point at which a fall could occur, such as an edge. Active fall arrest, well, the fall occurs. While this is appropriate in certain circumstances, such as when the worker must work at an edge or even beyond the edge, it is quite a ways down the preferred order for the fall prevention and protection hierarchy. We're protecting a worker from a fall here, not preventing the fall, and that's not good. So administrative controls or safe work practices, JHAs, include warning signs such as barrier tape, lights and alarms to modify or influence worker behavior. The least protective, as this is an active barrier requiring action by a worker, it can easily be defeated by human behavior or inaction. And finally, training, formal fall protection training, toolbox talks, annual OSHA training, and new hire orientation. Inspection and rescue plans. The inspection and rescue plan, basically you have the ABCDs. And the A, we're going to talk about anchorages. And then again, the B is body support. Does the harness fit? C are the connectors. Are they appropriate? And then D is a descent or rescue. So again, the A, I believe, David, is what, the F-150 rule? Is that what you call it? I guess I don't want to put David on the spot, but he did a good job of explaining this.
Yeah, we call that the F-150 rule. So if you look at a F-150 pickup truck, and you look at, the weight of it, you have to look at your anchor point and say, would my anchor point, could I suspend an F-150 from it? And of course, the reason for that is the calculation of the amount of force from a fall would be that 5,000 pounds of force. And so instead of trying to figure out, with a pencil and paper, how much is that, and will this, girder, if it's a building girder or if it's another support where you're anchoring to, it's easier to think in your mind is, could I hoist a truck up from that point? And if the answer is yes, then you're good.
Okay. And I also believe on the D side, when we talk about descent and rescue, what Amazon noticed was a lot of people will discuss rescue, but then we don't tell the person that's going to rescue us, right, David? So that was that missing piece that they were concerned about. Like Eric may say on my JHA, hey, we have a rescue plan, but then I don't go tell David, who's if something does happen, how are we going to get that person down? Is it with a man lift? Is it with a forklift or a ladder? Is that something we need to be cognizant of, right, David?
It is. So if you go to OSHA's website, what they'll tell you is that it is not a law that it's absolutely required that you have a formal written plan, but it doesn't hurt and they have templates you can download that have a plan that tell you, what you need to have in that checklist that says, okay, if the worker is conscious or if the worker is unconscious, what are you going to do? Do you need additional equipment for a rescue? In other words, would you need to have a second lift? Is there going to be a self-rescue device involved? And if so, if the person is, let's say, exposed to shock, then you have to understand that it's not a rescue you can perform. The expectation is in 4 minutes from the time of discovery. So all of those things you want to have considered in your plan. You shouldn't be waiting until someone is, let's say, fallen and they are suspended from their fall arrest system to start thinking, what is my next course of action? You should already have a checklist that you can just run down and say, okay, here are the conditions. Here's what I need to do.
Perfect. Thank you. So again, David told us very professionally what the F-150 rule is. It's a steel member is preferable. So anchorages, need to be determined by a qualified person. So Kerber, we do have further training for those of us out there that are asked to either work at heights or assign people to work at heights. You can use wood, but the wood must be, a wood anchorage must be signed off by a certified engineer. So what type of fall protection will I need? In most cases, we have guardrail systems, a safety net, or personal fall arrest system must be used. In some cases, fences, barricades, covers, equipment guards, or a controlled access zone may be used. Employers and employees must be protected from falls from height, working surfaces, floor and wall openings, so dock doors, or we've been to sites that they may have utilities in the foundation, and so they'll have an access point with the door that lifts up or can be removed. Objects that may fall on us from above, object generated, impact, hard hat. Remember, bump caps are for wear generated, so if I'm going to walk into something, I might bump my head or if I lift up. But if we're in an active construction zone, again, we would have to have a hard hat with the fall protection. Fall arrest, the key takeaway is stops you during a fall. Fall restraint prevents you from reaching the potential for a fall hazard. So when evaluating a job task or work scope and determining the consequences of a fall arrest, remember shock absorbing lanyard, calculate the total fall distance and compatible to the anchorage height for impact point. Will there be a swing or a pendulum effect? And if so, will the anchorage point hold and will you impact a wall or a fixed object? So a lot of these go into the planning when we are working for a fall protection program. Some examples of personal fall arrest systems are self-retracting lifelines or yo-yos, functions like a seatbelt in your car, allows a hands-free operations. We have rope grab systems, which are fixed length lanyards with the rope grab that may require manual assistance to allow for movement. Fall protection options. So we have personal fall arrest systems, which you'll hear a lot, go get your harness or your PFAS. Again, we have guardrails and then we have safety netting. Guardrail systems provide a barrier to protect the employees from falling. So Top edge of the guardrail must be 39 to 45 inches above the walking working levels. There must also be protection from falling between the top rail and the walking working surface or mid rails. You can have screens, mesh, or intermediate vertical members may be used for this protection. There are specific requirements for their installation. The protective barriers must be strong enough to support a falling employee. Wood chain or wire rope may be used for top rails and mid rails. Floor holes and openings need to be completely covered. Material to withstand the anticipated load and use, weight of personnel or powered industrial equipment driving over them. Always inspect the entirety of your lifting gear prior to use. Ensure fit for purpose. This is a Kerber life-saving rule. We also have multiple regulations that can be found in the EHS manual. So plan lifting operations and control the area. So a suspended load is an object that is temporarily lifted and hangs above the ground. It can fall on us or swing and crush us. Lifting operations need to be planned and performed by competent personnel using certified equipment that has been inspected and is fit for the specific lift. To protect people around suspended loads in any lifting operations, access should be controlled through physical barriers and exclusion zones. Examples of crane and lifting operations are overhead gantries, wall-mounted gantries, mobile gantries, and chain hoists. A collaborative formal risk assessment was conducted with SCM operations and the EHS team, which concluded that all SCM lifting operations utilizing the overhead and wall-mounted gantry cranes are to be considered routine and a level 1, so they can use their daily routine F221 form on the 90-day rotation. All other lifting operations are considered a Kerber life-saving rule, even at DFW campus, and need to use a daily JHA. So you can get with your EHS team or your supervisor if you need assistance in completing this. Rigging and slinging gear also require pre-use inspection and a documented annual inspection. Okay, fire protection and prevention. We'll have a couple slides on fire protection and prevention because fires are so easy to break out with electrical. We have a lot of electrical here from our desk and our office spaces, and then also out in our SCM and assembly areas. We discuss in-depth fire prevention and protection due to the risk fires pose to industries like us. Fires are the #1 cause for business interruptions, and a proactive approach to housekeeping and proper segregation and disposal eliminate one of the 4 components to having a fire. Some other key elements in a fire prevention are adhering to work processes such as time and temperature in our coatings process, electrical workmanship, properly protected and insulated wiring, J boxes covered and no exposed wiring. Don't forget your assured grounding inspections. In order to have a fire, you must have all 4 components available in right quantities: fuel, oxygen, heat, and a chain reaction. If we can eliminate any of the 4 categories, we can control or extinguish the fire. Before we get into our discussion of classes of fires and fire extinguisher types, let's remember that all our and our colleagues' safety is our #1 value. If you see, smell, or suspect a fire, immediately notify someone to alert personnel, then investigate and confront if you feel comfortable to do so. Do not become a victim yourself. Fire prevention, good housekeeping, proper disposal of waste materials, remember incompatibility, hot work, fire watch, evaluate area for flammable or combustible materials, properly use extension cords, assured grounding program, and overloading. Use devices for intended purposes. #1 cause of fires at home is cooking. #1 cause of fire at work are electrical, followed closely by poor housekeeping. There are 4 classes of fires. Class A, which is wood or paper. Class B, which are flammable liquids. Class C, which is electrical. Class D, which is flammable metals. Class A, fire prevention, good housekeeping, and waste minimization. Class B, fire prevention, Unless in an approved container, never store more than 25 gallons of a flammable liquid inside a building. Store in a proper location and away from
Yes, ma'am.
ignition sources.
Take whatever you can get.
Limit the size of portable storage containers to
There's
5
no
gallons
cars
each.
available.
Use flammable liquids in a well-ventilated area.
I'm in a hurry. Just
Class C fire prevention. Check electrical cords, fittings, and outlets. Keep electrical motors clean, correctly rated fuses, investigate odors, usually first sign of an electrical fire. It is important to ensure that all appliances, electrical components, and wiring are done correctly and well maintained. Overloading outlets and improper charging of electrical devices should be avoided. Additionally, ensure that you have the latest fire extinguisher designed for Class C fires. Class D fires are extremely rare because they are associated with combustible metals. These metals are lithium, manganese, aluminum, and sodium. Laboratories, machine shops need to be aware of the possibility of providing fuel for Class D fires. Class D fires require immediate heat and immense heat to start, but will gin up relatively quickly once the fire has initiated. Most Class D fires occur when the combustible metals are in dust, flake, or shaving forms or are molten. A Class D fire cannot be extinguished by water as it produces hydrogen at a high temperature and eventually an explosion occurs and spreads the fire further. It is therefore a special extinguisher, powder-based, and sodium chloride, which is edible salt, or other salts are used to extinguish a Class D fire. Sands are also effective in putting out a Class D fire. In terms of household and workplace fires, Class B, A, C are relatively common. In fact, many typical fire extinguishers are rated ABC, meaning they are capable of extinguishing flames that fall under these three categories. Class D fires are extremely rare. However, once initiated, they're very difficult to extinguish and have normally a separate fire extinguisher. So pass. Pass. Know how to use a fire extinguisher properly. Pull the pin, aim the extinguisher at the base of the flames, squeeze the trigger while holding the extinguisher upright. Sweep the extinguisher from side to side, covering the area of the fire with the extinguishing agent. Fire extinguisher monthly inspection. It is the extinguisher in a designated area and in its brackets, not resting on the ground, not blocked and readily accessible. No visible defects or dents. Seals and tamper indicator present, not broken. Do you check the fire extinguisher in your work cell? If you need it, will it be there and be charged? Now, EHS does the monthly inspection and works with the area authorities to make sure that the fire extinguishers are in good shape and hung. If anyone notices that there may be a problem with a fire extinguisher or a fire extinguisher is missing, please just contact myself or Sandra. So hazard communication or HAZCOM sounds complicated, but is it? The Hazard Communication Standard, or HCS, is now aligned with the globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals, which is called the GHS. The HAZCOM provides a common and coherent approach to classifying chemicals and communicating hazardous information on labels and safety data sheets. In order to ensure chemical safety in the workplace, information about the identities and hazards of the chemicals must be available and understandable by workers. The globally harmonized system improves workers' immediate understanding of chemical hazards via pictograms. The HAZCOM standard gives you, the employee, the right to know about the hazards or dangers, chemicals, or substances you may have to work with or around. The employer is required to train you, the employee, about these substances, how to work with them, required PPE, and what to do during emergencies related to these substances. The employer must also maintain a chemical inventory list, a safety data sheet book, and chemical safety plan, and provide you, the employee, ready access to all of these items. Labels. Chemical manufacturers and importers will be required to provide a label that includes a harmonized signal word, a pictogram, and hazard statement for each hazard class and category. Precautionary statements must also be provided. Labeling applies to primary and secondary containers. Chemical manufacturers and importers must convey the hazard information to downstream employers by means of labels on containers and safety data sheets. Language used on the warning label does not have to be identical to that on the safety data sheet. Chemical manufacturers, importers, and distributors must be sure that containers of hazardous chemicals leaving the workplace are labeled, tagged, or marked with the identity of the chemical, appropriate hazard warnings, the name and address of the chemical manufacturer, importer, or the responsible party. Consumer products having labels meeting the requirements of the Consumer Product Safety Act do not have to have additional labeling under the HAZCOM standard. Various other chemicals products, for example, pesticides, foods, cosmetics, beverages, vaccinations, and alcohols that are all subject to labeling laws administered by other federal agencies are also exempt from the label requirements of the HAZCOM standard. One safety data sheet may apply to multiple complex mixtures having similar contents or hazards. Safety data sheets should come with the original packaging with your chemical shipment. Safety data sheets can be found online at multiple sites free of charge. Kerber also subscribes to Velocity EHS, which provides and catalogs our safety data sheets on the DFW campus. HAZCOM training is required when you're a new hire or upon initial assignment, annually, or whenever a new material is introduced into the work area. Rule of thumb for hearing conservation. If you need to speak in an elevated voice, you most likely need to wear earplugs. 85 decibels is the trigger for hearing protection determined by a time-weighted average for an 8-hour day. If you have questions regarding time-weighted average at 85 decibels or an acute exposure, please contact your EHS team. The DFW campus is below the 85 decibel threshold. Our parcel client sites are most likely below the 85 decibel threshold. Our project sites are also below the 85 decibel threshold. However, if you are exposed to an aircraft while outside, such as a FedEx or UPS or Amazon facility, wear hearing protection as designated by the authority there on the airport or at your client site, which will usually be earmuffs and earplugs. Any facility or site that exceeds a time-weighted average of 85 decibels will have to have a hearing conservation program and a noise survey identifying which areas require hearing protection and what kind of hearing protection is required. If you have a question regarding noise in your work site, contact your EHS team. Some hearing protection devices must be fitted. Hearing protection devices afford varying levels of protection that should be evaluated for proper rating. Hearing protection is considered PPE and must be selected based on the level and type of noise exposure in the workplace and your exposure time. Powered industrial trucks include forklifts, powered jacks or rabbits, aerial work platforms, and man lifts. Operation of this equipment requires further training and proof of competence via a hands-on demonstration. The operator is ultimately responsible for the safe operation of their vehicle. The operator must be licensed by their employer. The operator must keep a copy of their license with them when operating the equipment. Licenses for operating powered industrial trucks are valid for 3 years at Kerber. Let's bring in Bruce to share his experience with working with equipment that has been locked out and tagged out, but not verified zero state by tryout.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This was in a past life, but one of the things we stress to all our technicians on the job site from a service standpoint is lockout, tagout. The gentleman in question had locked out the unit, but he didn't test the unit for stored energy and started working on the piece of equipment. While he was working on the piece of equipment, the equipment engaged and took the top of his finger off. So we've got to make sure that even though we lock out and tag out something, we got to make sure that there's no stored energy or residual energy in the equipment that we're testing. That's it, Eric.
Well, I appreciate it, Bruce. And again, you know, we want to learn from other people's experience, and that's a very valid. It's one of the things that I know that your group does day in and day out is lockout, tag out, and you know, we almost need to have that second phrase or that third phrase, which is try out, to make sure we have no stored or residual energy. It's probably happened to all of us that have worked with hazardous energy. So thank you. So electrical safety at Kerber, which is working with, on, or around electricity or equipment, presents significant risk. Again, this is a Kerber life-saving rule. Electrical safety covers both the control of hazardous energy of electricity, or more commonly known as lockout tagout, and arc flash safety associated with NFPA 70E electrical safety in the workplace. Our expectation here at Kerber is zero state energy via our lockout tagout process and live dead live verification, or check for stored or residual energy. In some operational scenarios, such as installation, maintenance, or troubleshooting, we may have to interact with live circuits, equipment, or panels. Working in a live electrical environment presents additional risk, such as arc flash, based on voltage. We have tools in our EHS program for this. Primary means of control at Kerber is lockout tagout. If the equipment is to be energized, then an energized equipment checklist will need to be completed along with the JHA. For those of us who find ourselves assigned to work that requires the control of hazardous energy via lockout tagout or working on energized equipment, additional annual training is required. This training can be found on the safety corner. Electrical hazards include shock, from which an individual can recover, electrocution, which is the fourth leading cause of industrial fatalities, fires, burns, arc flash, and arc blast. Shock severity depends on the path of the current through the body, the amount of current, or amps, and the duration of contact with the electricity. Other factors that may affect the severity of the shock are the voltage of the current, the presence of moisture, the general health of the person prior to the shock. Low voltage can be extremely dangerous because, all other factors being equal, the degree of injury increases the longer the body is in contact with the circuit. Make your environment safer by doing the following. Lock and tag out circuits and machines. Prevent overloading wiring by using the right size and type of wire. Prevent exposure to live electrical parts by isolating them. Prevent exposure to live wires and parts by using insulation. Prevent shocking currents from electrical systems and tools by grounding them. And prevent shocking currents by using GFCIs. Prevent too much current in the circuits by using overcurrent protection devices. To be authorized to perform lockout tagout, you will need additional training and demonstration of competency. This training today serves to inform personnel who are considered affected. First, conduct a JHA, which is documented in acquired source documentation such as the equipment-specific lockout tagout procedure. If work must be conducted on live equipment, complete the energized equipment work checklist to determine the arc flash requirements such as boundaries, tools, and PPE. Arc flash protection is required whenever the criteria are met that an arc flash event, which is followed by an arc flash blast. An arc flash event is defined in NFPA 70E. An arc flash is caused by overloading or overheating of circuits, damaged circuit breakers, overfusing, wiring in a non-workmanlike manner, faulty electrical panels. Are these scenarios preventable? Sure they are. So energy released during an arc flash event, in summary, basically it's almost 1 pound of dynamite. So you can see why when we're working around energized panels or equipment, we need to make sure that we have the right PPE testing protocols and also that our boundaries are in place. Employees must not work near any part of an electrical power circuit that the employee could come in contact with in the course of work unless the employee is protected against electric shock by de-energizing the circuit and grounding it or by guarding it effectively by insulation or other means. In work areas where the exact location of the underground electric power line is unknown, employees using jackhammers, bars, or other hand tools which may come in contact with the line shall be provided with insulated protective gloves. Before work is begun, inquire or observe by instruments whether any part of an energized electric power circuit is so located that the performance of the work may bring any person, tool, or machine into physical or electrical contact with the electrical power circuit. Post and maintain proper warning signs where such a circuit exists. The employer shall advise employees of the location of such lines, the hazards involved, and the protective measures to be taken. This part of the presentation emphasizes hazard identification, avoidance, and control. No attempt has been made to treat scaffolds, ladders, or stairwells exhaustively. Let's hear from Joe regarding an experience he had with the ladder while working at home. You're muted. Well, it sounds like Joe may be having some issues. So while he's waiting to get on, basically, I believe Joe was working at home on a 9-foot ladder and lost his balance by overreaching. And he ended up having some fairly significant medical injuries as a result of this. And
Eric, can you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead, Joe.
Okay. Hey, and I'm not sure if everybody can see the photo that I'm trying to share really quick, and I'll keep it very shortly. It's just basically like Eric said, and like Jerry talked about, the fact that we don't plan for accidents. And I know that this entire OSHA program and this safety information that Eric's providing is very cognizant and important for us to know about the workplace. But mine actually happened at home, and it's actually right around this time frame because as people prepare to put up Christmas lights or Halloween decorations, we seem to tend to get onto ladders, and we're definitely not thinking about the same safety protocols that we might do at work as we do at home, and accidents definitely can happen. A 10-foot drop from a ladder can bring you down on your shoulder, and as you can see, it comes to the point where an entire shoulder has to be replaced. It's definitely not something that anyone would want to do. And as much as importance as all this information is for our consideration at work and on the job sites, mine is just a simple reminder that, especially as we get ready for the holidays, to keep in mind those same kind of safety protocols as we are at home.
That's true. And I don't think Jerry or Stefan makes EHS charge people for all this awesome training they're getting, right, to take home. So, and that is important, and I appreciate you talking about that. So why do you think we have a life-saving rule on logo on the ladder, scaffolds, and the stairway section? The reason is because we're potentially working at heights. And so that's what we want to do, is make sure we look at that and make sure that, do we need someone to hold the ladder or help us on the scaffolding? So thanks, Joe. So ladders, always inspect first, remove broken or damaged ladders, never stand on the top 2 steps, 3 points of contact, never overreach, which sounds like what may have happened to Joe, lost the center of gravity. And then fall protection must be used if a fall hazard exists. So the working length of ladder is the distance along the ladder between the foot and the top support. Ladders are a great tool at work and at home, but don't take and work off ladder for granted.
Hey, Eric, you want to share your screen again?
Oh, there's someone. All right, hold on one sec. Let me back up. Almost there. Okay. So everybody got me back up? All right.
Thanks.
Okay, so that's one we just talked about, the do's and don'ts on the ladder. So just don't take them for granted. They can't injure you, even though we all probably have 3 of them at home. So the most important item to remember about ladders is your lean ratio against an object. So if you're not using an A-frame ladder, and again, it's 4-to-1. So for every 4 foot in height, bring it 1 foot out from the base. So 4-to-1. So hand and electric tool safety, why do you think we have a life-saving rule on this? And again, part of this one is electric shock. So we want to inspect before each use, no site repair unless authorized, no job site fabricated tools, stow and store properly, tag out and or discard if damaged. Some tools may need current calibrations such as multimeters and tape measures or calipers. Tool hazards include objects that fall, fly, or abrasive or splash, harmful dust, fumes, mist, vapors, and gases. Remember to check the condition of the cords, the condition and the connectivity of the batteries. Additional tool hazards are misuse or improper maintenance, such as if a screwdriver is used as a chisel, if a wooden handle on a tool such as a hammer or an axe is loose or splintered or cracked, if the jaws of a wrench are sprung, the wrench might slip, if impact tools such as chisels, wedges, or drift pins have mushroom heads, they might shatter or separate on impact. Electric power tools need to have a 3-wire cord plugged into a grounded receptacle, double insulated, or be powered by a low voltage isolation transformer. And offhand grinding machines use work rests to support the work. They are to be equipped with adjustable work rests to compensate for wheel wear. The work rest shall be securely clamped after each adjustment. The adjustment shall not be made with the wheel in motion. So floor and bench mounted grinders shall be provided with a work rest which are rigidly supported and readily adjustable. Keep these work rests not more than 1/8 of an inch from the surface of the wheel. Hazards working with powered pneumatic tools are getting hit by a tool attachment or a fastener. Some examples are nailers, staplers, chippers, drills, and sanders. When fastening attachments to air hoses, ensure the tool is securely coupled. Examples of a crow's foot and a whip check on this slide. If a line uncouples at a locking device, a whip check will reduce the force in uncontrolled air hose movement. Compressed air creating do's and don'ts. Don't use compressed air for cleaning your clothing or body, ever. Using compressed air to blow yourself or clothes off could possibly result in an embolism or introduce subcutaneous contaminations. For cleaning purposes where pressure is regulated to less than 30 psi and with effective chip guarding and PPE, you can use compressed air to clean parts of your floor or equipment. PPE is selected after a job task or work scope has been reviewed and residual risk are ranked. Then we determine the appropriate PPE to protect us from residual or remaining risk in the working environment. Again, PPE is considered the last and weakest barrier or control in the hierarchy of controls. PPE is not a one-size-fits-all. There are varying degrees of protection afforded by different types of PPE. For example, cut-resistant gloves versus electrically rated gloves, or hard hat versus bump cap. A couple of important points to remember about PPE are selected on residual risk or remaining risk in the job after barriers are put in place. PPE is the last line and the weakest line. PPE will usually limit or minimize the severity of harm to us if we are contacted by the hazardous energy source. With all this said, always select and wear the PPE in response to your immediate work scope or job task. If we are relying on PPE to protect us from a hazard released into the working environment, then we have lost control of work. Remember, PPE only minimizes the severity of the injury. So engineering controls are controls that consist of substitution, isolation, or verification, and equipment modification. This hazard has been removed from the working environment. Administrative controls are any procedure which significantly limits daily exposure by control or manipulation of the work schedule or manner in which work is performed. Using PPE is not an administrative control. Work practice controls or a type of administrative control such as a JHA. So PPE must meet ANSI standards for eyewear, regular or participation or prescription. Prescription lenses must meet specifications of ANSI Z81.7. Kerber has a form to use to order your prescription safety eyewear located on the safety corner. Regular safety eyewear will be provided to you by Kerber for use in your work cells or job sites. The nature of the hazards, the activity, and the length of the activity determines your glove selection. The variety of potential hand injuries may make selecting the appropriate pair of gloves more difficult than choosing other protective equipment. Take care to choose gloves designed for the particular circumstances of your workplace. Safety data sheets also provide information on PPE. Respiratory Protection Program. Kerber has no work processes here at the DFW campus that require us to implement our respiratory protection program. Applicability of the respiratory protection program is upon evaluation of the current work assignments or processes here at the DFW campus. There are no work practices that expose employees to risk that require the control of occupational diseases caused by breathing air contaminated with harmful dust, fogs, fumes, mists, gas, vapors, or smokes. So silica is usually related to cutting and grinding operations with silica-containing materials such as concrete. The controls include safe work practices, special tools, respirators, and environmental controls. Welding, cutting, and brazing, performed in designated areas by authorized personnel and designated or controlled by permit to work. Hazards associated with welding, cutting, and brazing are thermal, radiation, and metal fumes. The consequences are eye and lung damage, burns, and electric shock. When welding, cutting, or brazing outside of a designated area, a fire watch must be available and look for combustible materials within 35 foot of the point of operation or further if easily ignitable. Wall openings within 35 foot, combustible materials on opposite side of the metal walls and roofs that could catch fire through conduction or radiation of heat. Again, PPE is selected based on risk present in the job task. Welding, cutting, and brazing all present risk. They may not all be the same. Machine guarding safety signage safety interlocks. This is a Kerber life-saving rule. Removing machine guarding or signage and/or bypassing safety controls is prohibited from normal operations. For maintenance or troubleshooting activities, obtain authorization before overriding, defeating, disabling, or limiting safety controls. Examples of safety controls or safety-related parts of a control system are interlocks, e-stops, photo eyes, dead man switches, machine or equipment guards. So a little bit more on the BCP and EAP are similar documents with some overlap. Both can be found on the safety corner and EQM. For further information or training, contact your EHS team. BCP scenarios could be logistics or supply chain impacts and recovery processes, as well as any event that could have a long-lasting impact to business operations, such as winter weather, fire, damage to our building from adverse weather. EAP scenarios are immediate threats to business operations or us, and immediate actions by us to minimize harm or business interruptions, such as, again, adverse weather, tornadoes, shelter in place, fire, evacuate, or active shooter, run, hide, fight. So active shooter, run, hide, fight. You need to know multiple escape routes. Alert or guide others to the exit. Don't move wounded personnel, which may cause further injury. Draw attention to yourself and delay your exit. And then follow police commands. So this is a crisis management plan in our EAP. So run. If you can, it makes you a harder target and puts distance between you and the attacker. Wherever you go, be aware of alternate exits. Quickly and cautiously evacuate in a direction away from the attacker. Don't hesitate. Seconds matter. Remember windows and emergency exits. Leave your belongings behind. Keep empty hands raised and clearly visible. Follow all instructions from the police. Don't stop until you're sure you have reached a safe location. Hide. If there is no safe escape routes, find a good hiding place. Lock and barricade the door, turn off the lights, silence cell phones, prepare a defensive plan or an attack strategy. Fight only as a last resort and empower yourself. Use available objects as improvised weapons. Use teamwork and surprise. A coordinated ambush can incapacitate attacker. You're fighting for your life. Don't fight fair. Once you make or are forced to make the decision to fight, think your actions through. Fully commit to your attack on the active shooter and don't hesitate. So some general instructions for our active shooter: call 911 and leave the line open if you cannot talk. Once outside, keep empty hands up and follow instructions by responding emergency services. Keep going until you reach a safe area. If in hiding, stay in hiding until police instruct otherwise. Don't respond to knocks on the door unless you know it is the police. Wait for them to enter and clear. If injured, stay calm and wait for police. Avoid making too much noise or movement to gain the attention of the active shooter. If inside the active shooter scene and in hiding, only provide first aid to another person if safe to do so. Leaving your hide site may alert the active shooter to you and others' locations. So here are some resources. If you'd like further training on active shooter, you can go to the FBI website or the FEMA website. For site-specific pandemic protocols, these change fairly rapidly. So Stefan and the Kerber executive team has done a great job of sending us emails as the pandemic or epidemic protocols change and are updated. Again, Kerber takes its responsibility for our health and safety very serious, but they've also empowered us to take the health and safety very seriously also. So they've empowered us to exercise stop work authority. With that said, we each know that Kerber has taken the time out to train us, provide us the right tools for the job, and it is up to us to use that training. And it's our responsibility to work safely. And if we have a question, to go ahead and exercise stop work authority and get it right. So if we have any questions regarding this training module or your working environment, you can ask your supervisor, your EHS team to complete your training. Don't forget to go to the knowledge assessment and again, provide us some feedback. And I want to thank everybody and Jerry and Stefan for participating in this training.